Hello, everybody. This is Jamie Hodge. Can someone give me a message and let me know if I'm coming through loud and clear on the audio?
Great.
All right, so Barry says we're coming through loud and clear. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy day to come hear Steve and I in the Office Hours webinar. Steve is here with me. Barry is handling questions. Usually we have our Director of Marketing, Scott, kicking off the presentation here, but Scott is indisposed at the moment, so it's going to be just Barry and Steve and I today.
Hello.
Hello, Steve. You're coming through loud and clear as well.
All right. Thank you, Jamie. Looks good. I see your screen. I see Albert.
Yep. As long as you can see Albert, then we're all good to go. So, hey, wow, what a day of trading it was today. Nothing super crazy going on in the markets today, but we've got a lot of very interesting things to share with you guys today. We also have an open house going on this entire week, so we might have a lot of new people that have never had exposure to the product today. But the good news is with the methodologies that we teach today, whether you're a seasoned user or somebody that's just having their first exposure to trade ideas, I think once we explain and show you this methodology that we're using, you'll have a much better understanding of what these webinars are all about, and more importantly, how trade ideas is evolving and really just shifting the paradigm as far as what defines trading. So before we get started today, got to make the lawyers happy. So just want to do a little disclaimer here. It's there for everybody to read, but it's kind of like the credits at the end of the Big Bang Theory. They go very fast. You don't really have time to read them, so I'm not going to keep this up here too long. I just want to make everybody aware that we are a publisher of information here at Trade Ideas. So please do not misconstrue what we share with you here today as a solicitation to buy or sell anything. We're doing this strictly for your educational benefits. Okay, so as we always like to do, first thing on the agenda is kind of take a market recap and just let Mr. Steve Gomez, who's our in-house technician and excellent chartist, talk about where the markets have been and what maybe to expect over the next few sessions. Of course, we never like to predict.
Yep.
Right, Steve? We like to react.
We like to react, but we can have a bias, and we can talk a little bit about how that bias is achieved. So I went ahead and took the screen back over, and I'll give it back in a second when I'm done with it, Jamie. Only because I've got these lines that I've been marking up here for a long time on my charts. And for those of you that are new to the trade ideas today, one of the most common questions I've been seeing in the how do I category is how do I zoom in and zoom out of my charts, much like I'm doing right now? Well, the quick answer is to hold down the control key while you use the mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out. So that's what I'm doing for you right now. So where are we? I mean, we're still coming off that massive Brexit head fake, which broke below our support levels and gave the bears about a day and a half worth of excitement, only to see their face get ripped right back off yet once again. It's just been the par for the course lately for the bears. There's just been zero follow through for that camp. Nice little hitch here in the middle of our range, and then a big push through to all-time highs. I mentioned last week in the webinar, I forgot what day it was, but I redrew these two lines here. This line was the first level of resistance that we broke out of, basically visually right here last month. The second line goes back, if we zoom back a little bit, back to our all-time highs. Well, since we did clear out both of those levels, I've left them in there because there could be some backing and filling. This is a typical type of scenario for what was once resistance can become future support. So this would be our first line of possible pullback, and maybe even more deeper into this line back here if we were to get something like that. But more often than not, once we break above the line of interest, which in this case is this top orange line, you can see we only spent about a half a day here on this candle before we came right back. But the following day, pretty much shored up that argument, and we've been above 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trading days now, staying above this orange breakout line, which is a good thing. That's what the bulls want to see. They don't want to see this type of a wick through and then pull back down. So, and that being said, I would not be surprised at all for some more backing and filling going forward here in the SPY. And at any time, it is quite possible we could come down and just touch this level midday, and would love to see that reverse back up, or the bulls would love to see that reverse back up, and that would be an effective retesting of the breakout. It's very quite possible that we'll see that. We don't usually see the kind of movement we've had here, just a huge super trend. We probably could be running out of steam here. We haven't really gone anywhere in the last 3 days, but it's all possible for some sideways, which is even more bullish, but more likely to be some price action pullback and filling as well. So I'm kind of on the watch for that. It feels like the bulls are back in charge. Brexit did not mean anything. We can argue all day long, but the footprints in the sand tell us that it didn't mean anything. And so we're just kind of on a watch for some backing and filling, or maybe even some sideways action before a possible higher push to all-time highs. And that's pretty much where we are in the SPY, unless you want to add something, Jamie.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Steve.
All right, well, let's give the ball back to you. And
Right.
that is where we are. So I've got a bit of a bullish upside still for the near future, but probably some backing and filling in the near term, the next few days before that happens. Unless a black swan comes out of nowhere. That nobody can predict.
This is true, and that's a good time to pull this slide back over here and make it to where everybody can read it and talk about, reacting versus predicting, because predicting can get one in a whole mess of trouble, because typically predicting, I don't know, there's a lot of variables in there. Some of those variables might not be sound. So when we trade, what we always like to reiterate over and over and over again is you react to a specific setup that you see. Therefore, the trade unfolds. It's not the other way around. It's very similar to the analogies that myself and you, Steve, and Dan always use, like surfing. You get up on that wave, you're not predicting where you're going to go. You're reacting. You're moving your feet back and forth accordingly to stay on that edge, whether it's snowboarding, surfing, whatever. And as long as we react to the proper events, whether that event is an alert coming from an alert window or a play coming from our AI, Holly, they're all predicated on very sound things like statistics, okay? So moving right along here, when we talk about the Holly trades today and the trade arounds that were present within the Holly issued trades, we're talking about reacting. So let's just move on to that topic here. So here we have the couple of charts. We got the daily on the left, we got the 5-minute on the right, and of course here is the strategy panel for Holly and all of Holly's trades below here. So the thing to point out today is that as far as strategies, a strategy complement today, Holly came in with a pretty light strategy count. And we can see here only 3 strategies in the hopper today. Sunrise movers on support, both long, too much too soon, the only short that was in there out of 3 strategies. Now, interestingly enough, on support and too much too soon did not activate today. In other words, the very specific filter and alert criteria within these strategies was not triggered today. It's very specific. However, our good friend here, Sunrise Mover, kicked out 9 trades and operated at 88.9% accuracy today. Now, the interesting thing to point out is that coming into the session, this strategy was only predicted to come in at around, it's been performing over the past 40 trading days or so at a 61% success rate. So this guy just really knocked it out of the park today. And for those of you who have been attending the webinars consistently, probably already aware of this change. But for those of you who are new, who might be looking at this going, well, man, I don't even know what in the world I'm looking at here. Let me try to simplify things for you and explain a few of these columns that you're looking at here before we move on to the individual trades and the trade arounds within those trades. So we can see here today trades today, 9 trades from this strategy. This last symbol here is simply showing us the very last symbol that this strategy spit out today, and that was about 6 hours ago. And it's also going to be showing the last signal price here. These strategies that Holly engages in, they're typically designed around very short intraday hold times. Simply because, we have to make Holly accountable. So she's back and she's flat at the end of every session, and that is how she is graded on her performance. So let's get into the trades that were actually triggered today. And I'm going to sort these by the time. Of course, if you're wondering why it says 6:30, it's because my clock is Pacific Standard Time, so we get a nice bright early open on the West Coast. But here we can see all of the trades that were issued and the sequential order of each trade. So we can see here the first one out of the hopper today, and notice that when I double click, it automatically populates my trade ideas charts, and we've got a couple of things to point out here. So we can see the entry price was 28.82 for the RH trade. The blue arrow is pointing to the 5-minute bar in which Holly said, I'm going long in this stock. And we can see that from that point on, it was just a pretty good ride to the top of this range here. And Holly is programmed to abide by her hold times, profit targets, and stop losses. So there's always a reason why Holly gets out of a trade, and we can see the reason that the trade was closed right here, exit reason. Now the profit save and reduce risks are our proprietary additional parameters that we've recently released. It used to just be a good old-fashioned time stop. There used to only be 3 reasons why Holly would get out of a trade: time stop, stop loss was hit, or a profit target was reached. We've recently added the profit save and the reduced risk for trades that are either going our way or against us on the reduced risk side. And more or less, it's a time-based decay system. So the longer we're in the trade, the less we're willing to give back, or the more we're willing to risk on said trade if that trade is not working. So moving right along here, we can see in the risk off profit column, which is Holly just operating to the T, obeying all the rules, we can see that Holly got out of the trade and booked an 8-cent profit. And this is just a classic example here, because if we're in this trade here and we get this traction here and we're going up, 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 there's a good chance that we're going to try to stay in that trade as long as possible. So as we always like to say, just because Holly's getting out, whether it's a time stop, profit save, or reduced risk on the downside, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get out of it. And this also correlates with how we designed Holly to operate in the very first place, which this was not designed to be a black box system. This was designed to give you a high quality information stream in the form of a trader that is going to trade every day with very high statistical probability. Of course, we all know that all days are not the same, like the surfer that says, you know what, I know the waves are only 1 foot tall today, but hell, I'm going to go out there anyway. That's what Holly's doing. It doesn't matter how big the waves are, 6 inches, 6 feet, she's going to dive headlong in, and you're going to see the results of that activity.
Hey, Jamie, were you going to show a performance? Were you prepared to show the performance of Holly? Because I was going to say, for those that have been watching, and I know there's a few in here who have been watching Holly for the last few weeks, for the last 3 weeks we've been using that profit save, trailing stop, additional risk reward, and risk management, and it's improved Holly tremendously. I mean, there have been many more net profitable days, and I can almost see it on that chart where it was flatlining there back in late June, just kind of a slow flat line, and then it kind of came back to life the green line of Holly. So, I mean, if those of you have been watching for a while, you probably have noticed the same thing I have, that for the last 2.5 weeks, she's really been doing a great job, the AI that is, of managing risk and not letting good trades turn negative and go bad. And it's all adding to the final tally of performance. And it's only going to be getting better, in my opinion. I mean, I really feel like she's evolving a lot just in the last couple of months. Very, very pleased with a lot of the risk management we've seen. And so, like Jamie's saying, you're watching a statistically perfect trader. You can't always pull up a chair and sit behind a great trader, but now you can. And this great trader just happens to be somebody that's trading on no emotions at all, using nothing but the strategies and the numbers and the statistics. And, again, there was a few days, week and a half ago, where we didn't see any trades, and that, by design, is to be a teaching mechanism to let people know, you're welcome to jump in, but like Jamie just said, the surf's 10 feet overhead out there right now. Ollie's getting smashed up. She's doing her best, but if you want to try, you're welcome too. As opposed to what we had last Tuesday was just a wonderful uptrending day where numerous strategies were firing pretty much all to the long side, and they were all maximizing really nice all day holds. So point being is she is like a canary in the coal mine to be observed and watched and learned from, to see how she handles the statistically noisy markets and see how she handles trending markets. But there's nothing else out there at all, you guys, for the retail trader. People are asking us all the time, well, if this is so great, which it is, why don't you just sell it to a top dollar hedge fund black box? And believe me, they're asking. And they're offering, but that's not the intent and the idea here. The idea here is a crowd, mass, retail type tool that is just getting better and better by the day, and we couldn't be more pleased with the way Open House started today, having Holly put on a really nice demonstration in the early morning hours, and then sitting on her hands. No trade is a trade. Cash is a position. There was really, for those of you that asked, why were there no more trades after that first hour and a half flurry? Well, that seemed to be the sweet spot of the statistical probability area. The rest of the day was open, but there were no trades that fired, which simply just means the statistics did not line up. The data did not line up in order for Holly to get the trade execution that she tests for every night so well to get to the right type of configuration. So what Jamie's saying is a great point. Dan says it all the time. Holly is a teaching tool. It is not a black box. There's nobody out there taking every single trade, but there's a ton of people out there that are learning a lot about how to sit on your hands, how to have risk management, what a good contrarian entry might be on the chart. Some of these support, is that you type of trades, or resistance. You'll notice that when you call those trades up and look at them, they are going the opposite direction of where the price has just come from. And in my opinion, that's a really strong way to keep yourself in this game, is using nice contrarian entries to keep the noise down, because we all know once you get into some of these trades, the market does its best to try and shake you out of it. So I just wanted to jump in there and highlight that the last few weeks have been really nice, and I think a lot of it has to do with the new risk management parameters that Holly's now using.
Absolutely, Steve, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, because what we're doing with this, and everybody needs to realize, Holly's only 7 months old. She's 7 months old, and we just, improved her learning logic tremendously, as you can notate by, the changes here on up. She's been on a very good run here. Hopefully it's going to keep getting better and better. As you can see right here, I can't draw a line on this chart, but we're about to flirt with the all-time highs. And so who knows, by the end of the week, we could be pushing through those and setting, all new types of performance records. But the thing I'd like to reiterate before we get into the meat here, which are Holly's trades and the trade arounds, is that nobody else is doing this. And I know Dan says this all the time, and he's 100% right. This does not exist anywhere else. And it was designed by traders for traders, just like Trade Ideas was originally when we came online in the latter part of 2002. So, 14 years into it, this is what's happening. This is the future, and this will keep on going. So Holly's only 7 months old. Imagine what she's going to be like when she's a year, or 2 years, or 3 years down the line here. It's going to be pretty.
One more thing before you stash that away. And by the way, we will have we're dressing it up a little bit more for the performance at some point. This will be released publicly, but for now we just kind of tease it in our webinars. But one thing I want to highlight: look at where the Brexit was on that blue line. Jamie will highlight that for you. Look at what Holly did during that period. Nothing. Matter of fact, gained a few pennies. Nothing but statistically, there was no statistical advantage to be had at that time. So again, sitting back, sitting on your hands, cash is a position. The AI identified a very volatile environment and just said, no thanks, nothing really to be had here. So I thought that was of interest to show. Are you on mute?
Yeah, sorry
There you
about
go.
that. I got my window stuck there for a moment. Okay, so yes, everything's looking great. Holly's looking great. She continues to learn. We'll see what happens tomorrow. It's always a great adventure. But now, okay, what just happened there? Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, bear with me 1 second here because my layout seems to have hidden itself.
Is it
So,
minimized? Uh,
well, Windows 10 automatically upgraded me from
oh,
7.
oh, really?
So sometimes when I move my mouse the wrong way, everything disappears. I'll figure that out at some point, but let me get my proper layout back up here. Sorry for the delays. And here we go. Okay. Try this one more time. Okay. Everything coming through there again, Steve? Everything
Yep.
fine now?
Gotcha.
Okay. Once again, don't wiggle the mouse too fast. Okay. So let's look at the charts on the Holly trades, and then we'll discuss the trade arounds as well. So let's just sort these by the time. Of course, why my time changed to Central Time now, I don't know. But
That's funny.
regardless here, it should be the same data. So once again, we've already went over the RH trade. So let me just expand the chart here, as Steve was doing earlier. And on this first trade, I mean, it was such a choice entry, 15 or 10 minutes into the open here. There wasn't a whole lot of trade around on that one. You either participated or watched. It just ran straight up and then went range bound for the rest of the day. Let's see here. Resort my notes here for my trade arounds on Holly. 1 second. Okay. All right. So let's take one that presented a good trade around opportunity. So MLNX. This was the Holly call right here. And just to let everybody know that hasn't had exposure to this before, this blue line is just simply pointing to the bar in which Holly made the entry. And then we're going to see the corresponding blue box over here as her entry price, which is also going to correspond with the entry price column here. So MLNX right here, 51.17. So there's the Holly entry. But then there's a couple of different opportunities, once you get used to seeing, and of course this is all predicated on the patterns that you like to see. Range breaks from the open are very popular, depending on, it doesn't really matter how long it took the range to develop, but typically you have to give things, I don't know, everybody's a little bit different, but some people wait 30 minutes after the open, some people wait 45 an hour. It's really just a personal preference, much like your intraday, time frame that you look at. I'm a 5-minute guy. So Holly's making an entry here. When I see Holly call the trade out, what I like to see, this is very favorable right here on a couple of different fronts. Number one, stock tried to go down significantly in the opening 5 minutes, and then wicked right back up, meaning it did not spend a lot of time down here. Maybe there were some gap players thought the gap was going to get filled, but nope. They sucked it right up and snapped it right back up. So then we have this type of little sideways action here, which is always a good sign. So here comes Holly saying, I'll buy that right here. So we can draw some lines, whether you use the bodies of your candles or whether you're, stick to the rules hardcore and you use the wicks, I used just kind of right in the middle here. If it pops above there again, that's a range break. And if we look at the time here, about 40 minutes in, if it's going to pop out of that range right here, it did it. If we use the wick, we're looking right here. All right. So once again, just a little bit of trading 101 here. New trader gets into a trade. It's going his way. You've probably heard many times over, hey, you have to stick to your rules, but more importantly, you need to add to your winners. And that's, that's kind of hard to figure out in the beginning unless you have somebody telling you exactly what to do. So Holly calls it early here, and then we have the range break here. So there's an excellent opportunity to add to the position here or stick with what you got. And as Steve and I always like to say, it's all about not only getting into a winning trade and having it go your way, hopefully quicker, the quicker the better, because we're all creatures of greed and emotion, and a lot of trading is immediate gratification unless you're a multi-day hold person. So let's just pretend for a moment we got into 200 here. We got a nice pop. Maybe you're looking at your charts for one reason or another. You're like, I sure don't want this thing to go away. We always like to say, peel out a half, take your money on the first half, give the second lot a stop loss back down to break even. All right. So let's say you got into this trade, you exited up here or right here, but the bottom line is it went our way pretty quickly. All right. And then what happens? It folds over off the top. When it was down here, very easy to take the same entry price and set that limit alert again, because these things often repeat themselves. And this methodology that we're discussing right here, not only does it apply to a trade that worked and came back down, as this case was, but a lot of the times it works when Holly makes an entry and then gets stopped out. There's really not a good example of that today because she was so accurate. Once again, on 9 trades, 88.9% accuracy, 8 of 9 trades were winners. But some days, even though Holly is playing with perfect statistical probability, sometimes the timing is just off a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that over the course of the next week, you'll be able to see some of those. But there's really not a good example of that today. But once again, Holly gets stopped out of a trade sometimes. You can take that entry price, right-click, and set a limit alert so that once it gets back there, you're alerted to it and you can take advantage of it. All right, so let's look at another Holly trade around today.
About DGLY. Let's just call that one out for what it is. 12.8%. If you don't have the profit percent column enabled, you're going to want to pull that up. People always ask me, well, how do you like to, well, what do you pay attention, Steve, when Holly trades? Well, I really like the stocks under $5 and under $10 because when she gets them right, you get some really nice alpha generation in the terms of a profit point move. And in this case today, the DGLY was probably just about perfectly nailed. Additionally, on the exit as well, being kind of a risk-off type day where the S&Ps were mangling back and forth. But that was a really nice one. And I always try and give a good hard look to the ones under $5 and the ones under $10 because, like I said, when the AI does get hooked up in those correctly, there's been some really nice profit percentages generated in the last couple of weeks.
Right, so we can see here the entry point for DGLY, and that price was $6.13. And I mean, you just really couldn't ask for a much better fill here, just a few pennies off of its low that it put in earlier, and then wham, straight up. So profit percent on that one was a quick 12.89%. Now, to help clarify here, you might be looking and going, okay, she made 12.89% on that trade, but I'm seeing on the risk on profit column, that's showing a negative 2.12%. So, for those of you who have been users already, you know that this used to be called something else. But risk on is basically saying, okay, we're just simply going to stay in the trade. This is what would have happened had you stayed in the trade. So the risk off today, Holly killed it for 79 cents on that small dollar stock. Had she stayed in it, had she not exited when she did, then that would have turned into
it would have turned into a profit save is what it would have turned into, probably a trailing stop. It never would have gotten negative. That was the old Holly.
Yep. So you would have made less, and in the predecessor to Holly, then it would have went negative. So this is a great example of how we're constantly updating the software. It's not like we made this thing and we're like, okay, there it goes. It's constantly learning and that's the big difference between us and just about anybody else out there. I don't even know. There's not anybody out there that can even come close to competing to this. We are the only entity out there offering this type of technology to the trading retail public. This stuff used to be reserved for high-end people, and the reason, when I say high-end people, I'm talking about hedge funds, people that are co-located at the exchanges. So what does that mean exactly, Jamie? Well, that means if you wanted to engage in this type of activity, you had to have several $100,000, if not $1 million, just to have technology like this available to you, right? So what's happened over the course of the past 20 years is the barrier to entry to this type of data processing has made it impossible for the average retail investor to engage in this type of trading.
It just can't be duplicated. I mean, it's many years of the building blocks of the way the architecture of the program has been built, and then came along the odds maker, which was the manual back testing tool, and then from that came the Holly and the AI software suite that she learns from. So it's very difficult, if not impossible, for any of the big companies out there really to duplicate the 13, 14 years of technology that this is built on. As a matter of fact, certain companies like eSignal or Scottrade, they're basically like, well, geez, we can't beat them, we might as well just join them. So that's why you see some neat partnership deals with the E-Trade, eSignal, and other companies out there, because they can't compete. They can't build a better mousetrap. They're forced to use this, and we're just real pleased as punch to see the evolution of the way this AI technology is coming out to the retail. And you guys that are onto it should look at yourselves as early adopters, because this is the future. It's something new, and you guys are watching it grow right in front of your eyes, watching it learn how to grow up and walk and talk.
Yep. And I guess 7 months old. Holly's not even really walking yet. Maybe she's a strong crawler at this point in time.
Is AI like dog years? So
yeah, we could apply dog years. But the bottom line is this: it's only going to keep getting better. So for those of you who are already part of the Holly revolution, congratulations. For those of you who are being exposed to this for the very first time, great, glad you're here, glad you found us. Keep on, continuing through the open house for the remainder of the week, and I assure you, it's going to be a very eye-opening experience, to say the least. All right, so let's take a look at one more Holly issued trade and the trade around that was present in it as well. So I think I'm clicking on the wrong window here. So CCP. There we go. Okay, so notice when I click here, double click here on CCP, here's Holly getting long shortly after the open. In this bar right here, the 2802 corresponds to her price. And, as we can see here, risk off profit, getting out according to her rules, only made 2 cents. Risk on profit kicked in for about 36 cents. So whether you got in, with Holly here and, had a little pop here, consolidated a little bit on the smaller time frame, and then just kind of continued its way up. All right? So, great, a nice little winner. Once again, just because Holly's getting out, when we see a pattern like this, buyers and sellers are kind of equal, so a lot of the times we have to put on our trader's hat and go, yeah, thanks for getting me in, Holly, but I'm gonna take it from here. I'm going to manage the exit myself. And that's what we call the hidden alpha, the alpha that you can't see reflected in either the risk off column, or if I go risk on here. And of course, everybody pay attention to this little box. Risk off today, meaning I only want to go with Holly. I want to let her, dictate the rules and make them methodical entries and exits. $2.13. Had you played it and left them open all day, you would have only made 58 cents. Now, a lot of you might be asking yourself, well, how do I know, do I roll with risk on or risk off? Well, as we typically like to do, we like to bring these type of metrics to the forefront and then improve upon them later. So coming down the pipeline, I'm told, is another model.
Yeah.
that will actually suggest whether you operate in risk on or risk off mode. Right now, it's just kind of up to the individual investor, based on what you're seeing in the market. You can go with risk on or risk off. You can do a little bit of both, and that's the beautiful thing about it is we're creating this gorgeous, high-quality information stream and presenting it to you. And there's a lot of different ways to play the same instrument.
Yeah, and before you take off, and there's a couple of things. First off, that $1.84 in red is just glaring at me on that CALM trade. That's basically taking down the entire day of risk on, risk off in just that one trade. Some of the other trades happen to do better by holding a little bit longer. So there really is no red or green, black or white detail as to what is best. It really does suit you, the trader, with your trader's hat. But there's many different things you can look at. What are the spiders doing? How many times have the spiders or the S&P crossed the unchanged level? That would certainly be a level of noise. In my case, I'd probably want to go with risk off versus a really nice looking trending day is probably a bit more risk on. When you hear, boy, look at the breadth. All tides are being lifted today. It's a broad-based rally. That would be a risk-on type mode. A choppy reversal type day would be a risk-off. But it did come to my attention there, just looking at your screen, that one particular CalMain CALM trade really reversed hard and kept that risk-on box open, but dragged it down. The second thing is, Jamie, somebody brought up a good point. As this box column was being designed, there is no exit column in there. Let's show them quickly how to right click and just add the custom column, because it's a good point that somebody brought up there. Where do you see her exit price, Dwayne? We're going to show you. It's not in there at the moment. That's the reason, the exit reason, but we can pop the exit price in there just by going to right click columns and then configuring our custom columns, what it is we want to see. He's highlighting exit price, throwing it over to the active window. And now, I don't think you threw it over to the active window, did you?
Well, I thought I did. There we go.
Watching. Okay, you did. Okay, exit price is in there now.
Right by the entry price, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that's not being shown that you can bring on or you can suppress using the right-click custom column sort and column configuration there pretty simply.
Right. I just wanted to point out, Steve, for everybody's benefit, that this performance chart is based on risk off. So what you see right here, how we're transferring the S&P, this is all reflective of risk off. Now in the future, we're probably going to have risk on and risk off equity curves to give people even more information. So, just a little peek of what's coming down the pipeline. Of course, there's no ETA. As software works, it's ready when it's ready, but that's what's being told.
Can you go to just any other chart? Just grab any other chart, because somebody's asking me, well, how do you know what the exit price will be on the stop loss? And that's an easy one. You can either look at the smart stop column and add that to the or subtract that from the entry price, or you just use that red tag. On any old chart, that red tag will show you exactly where the stop price is open and active. In this case, the trade was closed before the stop price was hit because Holly took a bit of a profit and then used a trailing stop to lock in some profit on that one. But it's a good question. The blue is always going to show you the entry on the tag, and the red is always going to show you the active stop. So if you just have a horizontal crosshair, you can kind of get a quick idea as to what those levels are to answer your question there. All right.
Correct. And, we pulled up the CCP and talked about Holly's entry, but we never really got around to the trade around. So I'm just going to quickly point that out. And, once again, whether you participated here or not, or just said, okay, I'm going to see how Holly does on this trade, either way is fine. But once a stock is brought to our attention, we have some very good information. We know that this play has very good statistics of going our way in the short term. Of course, there's always the timing issue. Sometimes Holly's a little early. Sometimes she's a little late. All right? So, once again, Holly calls it right here, but then this was brought to my attention by Holly, so I can go like this. Okay. If this is where it was, or, maybe I'm monitoring the stock. Okay, Holly called it. It's not really going a whole lot yet, so I'm going to monitor it. Now, for what I would like to see is, once it gets back above these highs, I'd like to know about it. So this could be considered a trade around right here, because once it penetrates that line, we get another higher pop, and then it cruises on to, higher highs with a little pullback here. Of course, stocks don't go straight up. They take pullbacks. but using a 15-minute look back, not including the entry bar here, you wouldn't have gotten stopped out either. So once Holly brings something to your attention based on the pattern that you like, and that could be a myriad of things. I like to keep things as simple as possible because that makes my life as a trader easier. I see it, it's a simple pattern, I'm going to participate if it goes back up there because Holly is using it because it has extremely high statistical probability. So, in the tradition of keeping things simple, what can we count on these days, Steve, since we've kind of, had a front row seat at the evolution, or what sometimes I like to call it the de-evolution of the markets, where, Steve and I, beating on the keys back in the 90s, it was a whole different game. We'd watch price action. Well, we kind of all know that, what might be on a level 2 screen these days might just disappear, right? So it might be there one moment and it might be gone the next. So trying to trade around price action isn't a very effective tool these days. So what do we have to do? We have to rely on the footprints in the sand, which are the charts. We have to rely on Holly, who's giving us highly statistical probable trades. And then, one of the other things that I like to kind of talk about too is volume. Of course, we all know that for operations, we have to have high volume, and then for reversals from the top or the bottom, we typically like to see volume drying up. But when you think about it in those three types of things, trade ideas and everything that it brings to the table, Holly, our charts, and our volume, right? And there's a lot of different ways to put different spins on that trio of things, which leads me to the next trio, which we have affectionately termed the Holly Trinity. What is the Holly Trinity? Well, first we have to have an information source. Holly's an information source. Any other alert window or top list window within trade ideas is an information source. And then we look at where it's headed and where it might be going, footprints in the sand. And then we use our good friend over here, mine's hiding, our price alert window to make sure that we don't miss out on things. And so I started blank this morning, and so these are all the limit alerts that I input today. And of course, you can see my notes here. Now, for those of you who have had exposure to me in the past, I like the volume breakouts. So if you see a TB here, that's coming from the turbo brakes alert windows. And if you see Holly, it came from a trade around. All right. So, you can see the green line here, which was the limit alert that I set. So when we look down here at CCP later on, when my window starts flashing and I see CCP and I pull it up right here, I'm like, hey, it's back. The Holly trade, the high probability trade, has done its thing. It took a little pullback and now it's going to go again. Or let me rephrase that, it might go again. It's got really good statistical probability. So I'm going to take a piece. And we can see, that was good for another 23 cents. Burlington, not a Holly trade. But I think that everybody that sees this chart right here can see the value in a play like this, simply because what does this tell us? The gap up in BURL was, not very significant, and the buyers just took a hold of it immediately. So on the open, after seeing these types of bars, are we really just chomping at the bit to buy it up here? No, because it's expended so much energy. But once we see this type of action put in, and once it starts creeping around up here.
Love the sideways action there. That's what you're looking for.
And then we're thinking to ourselves, okay, if this thing does bust out, how much room do we have? What are our upside expectations? And of course, ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, this pattern is going to tie in to what Steve and I cover towards the end of the session here when we're going through the charts and giving you guys some limit alerts to watch for daily breakouts. So early on in the day, as the URL was just poking through there on extremely high volume, and you look at this chart and you're like, well, yeah, it's up here already, but this gives me a lot of confidence. It's a low-risk trade, and what's keeping it? Where's the resistance? Well, you can see here that it's in the upside void here. So when you see things like this, and then you have the intraday risk of this, it's just nice and easy. Of course, there's no guarantees, but called this one out in the trading room and posted it on Twitter right at the right time. So a lot of people were able to benefit from this, and it was just, this is what we do. These are the types of things that we find. And so, for those of you who are brand new, congratulations. We're glad you're here. All right, so once again, just to harp on the notes here, as we're making these limit alerts, we like to make notes to ourselves so that, when we see that play pop up, a lot of times we're going to have a lot more of these that are pending. You can see these down here are still working. They never triggered today. They might get their time in the sun tomorrow, but it's always a good idea to put notes in there. As Steve likes to say, that's your sane, calm self giving your future manic self in the trading session a set of instructions so that we just act methodically and we don't let our emotions take control. And that's what it's all about. We see the alert. We've already done the homework. All we have to do is react and go, yes, no, move on.
Do you recall what alert you saw that Burlington off of by chance?
Why, yes, I do, Steve. As the TB notates here, one of my favorite windows, simply because it's not it's not magic, but what it does is it keeps me attuned of institutional buying and selling. And let me just retrieve the window from my cloud, and I'll give you a little quick tutorial on it. So, okay, so this is the window that spawned the URL today. Now, it's very simple. It's what I like to refer to as a glorified high-low ticker. But the caveat that gives it some spice is that, yeah, I want to see stocks hitting a new high that meet this filter criteria, but only stocks where in the last 1 minute period that closed, that stock had to have traded a minimum of 3 times the amount of shares compared to what is normal for a 1 minute period for that specific stock based on our algorithmic smoothing process. So with this metric in place, if I removed it, it'd be just complete noise. But let me show you here. So what I'm going to do is my window, and by the way, if you've never seen trade ideas before, this is what we call an alert window. And if I right click and hit configure, once you're in this area here and you learn what these tabs do and how to navigate and use them effectively, then you're on your way to understanding trade ideas pretty completely.
I add something real quick. Anybody who's in here for the first time is wondering, gee, I want to ask, does trade ideas have X? Does trade ideas have Y? All you have to do is go to that configure and the search tab, and magic can happen in that configure search tab. Jamie was just showing you. All you have to do is just type in a keyword, RSI, MACD, Bollinger Bands, anything you guys are curious about, use that right-click configure in that search tab, and there's a great keyword search that just narrows down and drills down everything that you want to know. What does trade ideas have a filter or an alert for based on, enter your keyword, and you'll see exactly what options come back available to you. It's a great tool.
Right, so what I did, everyone, is I pointed this window only to BURL so we can see all the occurrences that came through this window today for BURL. Now I'm hovering over the range break bar right here. This was 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. So now we're seeing the history. So boom. This is where I got BURL because it came through in real time. So if it's breaking out of that range, what does it have to do? It has to hit a new high to get out of that range. So at 11 o'clock, I see BURL just poking its head above that range. But more importantly, just to refresh everybody's memory, I'm mandating a 3 times multiple here. And then I'm also showing that as a column here. So this is what I saw today in real time. I see, hey, BURL, beautiful trade, beautiful entry, doing 6 times, 9 times, 10 times, And before it was done with that little run, 15 times normal 1 minute volume. So if that's not volume, I don't know what is. Now, the interesting thing about this specific setup is that you would think that these stocks would do that and then stop. No, no. These stocks are typically doing it all throughout the day, even when they're not hitting new highs. These stocks are in play. We could extrapolate one step further and say most of the stocks coming through this window on any given day are being acquired by institutions. Most of the stocks coming through turbo breaks down, which is the exact same window, but hitting new low, are being sold by institutions. A good example of that today was Hasbro. I mean, we were in a pretty much up market, but look what was happening to Hasbro. So the bottom line is this: up day, down day, busy day, range-bound day, every day. This little window and its counterpart are going to be showing you these stocks are being traded by institutions. So you might find that information valuable. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But there's a lot of stocks that come through these windows every day that have tremendous upside potential, tremendous downside potential, and eventually the downside will take over. But we have no idea when that might occur. Could be a month, could be 2 years. Once again, this market is very, very reminiscent of the mid to late 90s market with Alan Greenspan up there talking about irrational exuberance. The market kept running for another, 2-3 years, Steve?
Yep.
Before we finally peeled over. This is the same thing, trying to pick when the market is going to fold over is an exercise in futility.
You'll be right eventually. Eventually.
Yeah, if you're not broke. Yeah.
If you're not insolvent. Yeah.
Don't get me started on the stories of people that I saw do that.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, a little quick time check here just to make sure we're not talking too much. So, and time flies when you're having fun, so I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to create some limit alerts and give them out to the good folks that are the premium package subscribers. So how about we pull up the trend change lubricant, Steve, and let's craft a few alerts.
Yep. Somebody was asking me earlier, and it's a tough question. Well, what's some of the best scans for longer term stuff? Well, really everything starts off as kind of a shorter term scan, but can develop into a longer term scan.
Yep.
But I will say the trend change lubricant was the one that I replied to you with. This one tends to have a bit more staying power. It's where a lot of our trade of the weeks come from. It's where Pandora came from 2 months ago. It's still chugging up higher. It's where AKS came from, moving higher. It's where even this week's came from, the Solar City. And you can actually point to it, right? You can actually point to Solar City right at the top of that trend change scan. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? I am right. Look at that. So there's good proof. The reason we like these for the longer term is because they're designed to filter out for something that's basing and trying to come out of its downtrend. And if those that are familiar with the different cycles of market cycle, you've got exuberance, fear, despair, and then things start to, I forget the names. I'm pulling them out of off my head here. But accumulation, early accumulation, where the price stabilizes and starts to accumulate again and develop a new trend and a new cycle. That's what a lot of these trend change lubricant setups are looking for. And then you sprinkle in a little short squeeze on top of it. In this particular case, Solar City, which is the trade of the week, had a really nice day for us, but it's got 51% short the float in there. And that's the little extra secret sauce that we like to sort this trend change lubricant list on, because we can sort any one of those columns. Most of the time it makes sense to sort for relative volume, which is great, but in these cases, with this type of setup that we're looking for, with a trend change and a short squeeze pop, it makes more sense to sort these by how much of the float is being held by short sellers, and that's the way we're sorting on this one. So we've got a couple of interesting setups that we might want to mark up, and we can finish off the hour here demonstrating the value of our price alerts. The value is, as Jamie said, it's part of the Trinity. We've identified a level of interest. Well, we're going to make this price alert determine that we don't miss the level of interest if it does in fact trigger. And then the beautiful thing is, going forward before we end, these are It's shareable through the cloud link, just like anything else is. So if some of you guys are trying the open house for the first time ever and you don't have any price alerts set just yet, well, we'll be able to give you some here after we set a few up, and we'll use the cloud link at the end of the hour here to do that. So what do we got?
Right, so just so everybody knows how easy it is to use the price alerts, and once again, here's our information source, our trend change lubricant top list, which identifies these patterns. So we pull it up, SHLD. So here we can see, this little base that's established here, and we just draw a line straight across from here. And what we're looking for, just like in the intraday example of BURL, it's a fractal pattern. It looks the same on every time frame. That's another beauty of this pattern. So, here we go. We can take the tops of these candles. So the high today was 1490. We got 1489 there. So just a penetration of today's high. So we'll just say 1491. Sounds good. And then we also want to make sure that we're programming the window with the right price direction. We don't want the price of SHIELD to fall. We click here. So if the price of SHIELD raises to 1491, we want to go long. And then we want to make a note here. This is our trend change lubricant window.
67%.
And it's the daily pattern with a short float of 67.78%, right?
Absolutely huge.
So we say save. That will now be in that price limit alert window. So when that thing triggers, boom, it'll pop up, get your attention so that you can act upon it.
OUTR, just real quick, is worth mentioning. I don't know if are we going to mark this one up or not, but this was the trade of the week last week, in addition to AKS, was kind of a bonus of OUTR because look at that 65% short the float, creeping right up and going sideways along that very interesting pivot level that couldn't get above last month. It's worth noting. And so this one is actually still behaving. If this trade gets above that technical pivot level and you're a short seller that's been short since 40 and now you're out of the money and it's looking like it wants to go technically higher into the void, your only choice is to buy to cover, which creates a buying frenzy, which we call a short squeeze. So that's one of the main reasons that OUTR is still on our watch list and was an honorable mention last week at the trade of the week.
Yeah, and I really like this one, Steve, because, I just drew the line straight across from the top of that candle there, not including the wick, because of what we have going on right here. If this thing breaks, and look, the range is getting tighter and tighter, so we can define our risk down here.
Mm-hmm.
And if this thing pops, that's only, today the high was 46.24, so we're looking right at 46.40, 46.41.
That's it.
If that thing pops and gets some traction, we got a void up here.
Yeah, and if you're a short seller, you don't want to be probably any part of that void. If it's going up through there on a short squeeze, you're going to be get roasted. Real quickly, not that it usually matters because I don't usually concern myself with fundamentals, but I always like to know what a company does. For instance, this particular company, if you don't know, is in charge of all the red box DVR rentals, DVD rentals you see with people lining up all the time in the supermarkets, and also the Coinstar, which I use religiously. It's worth 8.9 cents to percent for me, rather than having to roll up my coins and stand in line at the bank. So here's a company that's just got, a couple of decent robo products that people are still using, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why the short float is so high. They seem to be making money. But the fundamentals all stop right there. I'm just trying to give you guys an identifier as to what company this is we're talking about here.
Yeah, we're just going to kind of split the difference here, go with a 46.31, just to keep our eyes on it,
Okay. What next?
And once again, the short float, that's just an added bonus because it's going to add fuel to the fire.
It's important to know. It's important to know that when those notes come up. Otherwise, you're probably going to forget.
Okay, and then of course, Steve, Solar City, Scuddy was our trade of the week, which you put out, and it was hit pretty quickly today off the open, right?
Mm-hmm. Basically, 25.15 was the opening trade trigger. So it opened up below it and then traded up through it and never looked back. So I wish they would all be that easy. Sure would make my life a lot easier.
Right. Once again, there was a trade around in this one as well. Once it took its first little pop, nice little consolidation area here, sets up the range up here. So once again, if you're that type of trader, just draw the line right across here. You know, a lot of times if you can draw a horizontal line, it's very, very valuable information. Simple, but very effective. So Solar City still rocking the over 50% on the short float. And of course, we can see the reason Steve picked this one is because of the pattern that was being exhibited here. And today, it did exactly what we hoped these things would do.
Well, let's dig into it a little bit more. Zoom out as far as you possibly can. There's a bit more going on here in addition to the zoom out. I'm sorry, zoom out as much as you can. There's a bit more going on, and just with that. If you look at those, I guess it'd be those last two highs. Yeah, if you draw a steep trend line off the last two spikes, you know, going back from 60, yeah, and so we have the broken trend line. That's exactly what we're looking for, a trend change reversal. We've got our broken trend line, check. Then we have some nice sideways moving action, basing and cupping, and you know, at some point we're going to have some moving averages in here that are going to be real clear. I like to use the 10-period moving average, and when we get the moving averages visible on our charts, we'll talk about adding those to the mix a little bit as well. But it was being held in like the hand of the 10-period moving average, holding it like a bird in its hand, trying not to squeeze it too hard, but just let it fly. It's exactly what I was kind of looking for, you know, something that was breaking the downtrend and then turning, cupping, and moving sideways and getting ready, just waiting for that spot to hit, and then using that short float percentage as rocket fuel. So that kind of tells a better story there.
Right, and you know, bottom line is a pattern is a pattern. Patterns can, you know, go. Well, when you have the favorable pattern with extra high short float, even better. You have a pattern with extra high short float and a low float in the stock to begin with.
That's
That's
a tinderbox.
Uh-huh.
All right, we have a couple more, I think, off of here before we disappear.
Okay. I believe the SPWR.
Really like that one. Yep. And once again, you guys can see a good case to be making there for a possible trend change coming up. Very similar to the Solar City, moving sideways, getting ready to try and drift higher. We just needs a reason and a trigger and a pivot level to confirm it. So I think the highs of today is just a real simple way. If it can follow through from today, I'd like to know about it. And once again, this one's got 35%. I think anything above 20% short the float can be interesting. Some people like 15. I'd rather go a little bit more like 20 because that's where you really start to get your squeezes in there. Anything above 20, in my opinion. So everything that we're seeing up here, we're in 60, 50, 40, 30%. That's why we call it a top list, because we're sorting by the short float and having the cream rise to the top.
All right, so give me 1 second here. I seem to have made an error here. Okay, so the high of the day was 1591, correct? So we're going to go 1593, let's say. I think I read that one wrong. Rises long, okay. And this one had a short float of?
Where'd it go? You got
what
Holly.
Was it?
You covered it up with Holly.
Yeah, okay. 35%.
Okay, good enough.
93. %, short, and a trend change loop. That should get the job done. All right, so what else, Steve? Do we want to keep going with this one, or do one
I thought
more?
there was one more in there, either Zoom Z or I or LCI. One of those three I thought may have had some potential. Yeah.
Zoom Z not too bad looking.
Yeah, I kind of like that Zoom Z, how it actually broke out today. It would have been nice to have a little bit of an earlier spot in there as it broke above that little tabletop. So let's take a look at that one. Let's take a look at the other two and see which one is going to be the best of the three.
Yeah, and Zoom Z does have a almost 44% short float, so
Yeah, really
LCI
nice.
was the other one?
Yeah. Nah, that one's been trucking. It's been going too far,
Yeah.
too long. And what does that eye look like in Telesat? Yeah, let's just go with Zoom Z. I like it. We might have been a day late, but there could be some follow through on that 43% short the float.
Sure. Give me 1 second here. Make sure I give everybody the right alerts. Okay, SPWR the OUTR and the shield, right?
Yes.
And now we want to add Zoom Z, right?
Yep.
Or, yeah, Zoom Z. I thought I just added that one. Okay. There we go. Okay, 1615 on the Zumzies. And a 43% short float. Okay. Well, hold on, ladies and gentlemen. I rushed through that and recorded it as a short, and we certainly do not want that. $16.15 rises and along. And by the way, if you don't want your limit alerts sticking around for eternity, you can always tell them set an expiration date right here.
Which can become quite handy if you're using the price alerts for a Holly trade for the day only. Like a day only trade, you can have it expire like he just showed you.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think that's, what do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4 to pass on to everybody. And probably now is a good time, Steve, to let everybody know if they do want to become involved and become part of the Trade Ideas community, what are the prices and what are the packages that we currently offer. So Scott's usually handling this part of the conversation, but we're done here. So give me 1 second, and I'll pull that up for everyone. Hey, Steve, do you know where that static is coming from?
I don't hear it.
Okay, must just be my connection. Okay, everyone. So just before we move on to talk about pricing, want to let everybody know that we are right in the middle, or not in the middle. We just had day 1 of our open house. It's going to be going on through the 22nd, but you can still sign up all the way up until I believe it's the 20th. Is that right, Steve?
That was right, the 20th.
Okay. So if you're not a subscriber and not participating in the open house, then you can cruise on over to tradeideas.com/test drive, sign up, get 5 days of access for $7.99. Now, if you want to go ahead and secure your membership, these are the 2 packages that we offer. We offer the basic TI Pro, which is $99 a month. If you prepay, it's $888 a year. That gets you access to everything but the higher functionality, which is Holly and the RBI, GBI windows, along with the price alerts. Now, if you want access to the higher functionality in Holly and all that good stuff, the cost is $188 a month or $1088 per year, or excuse me, $1888 per year. Now, since we're doing the open house, we have a promo code that can save you a bundle of cash. Here's the code. It's all in caps, key to drive. If you use this code on checkout, you're going to save $388 off the premium annual. You'll get that for $1,500. Or you'll get $38 off your first month of TI Premium, $150 as opposed to $188 for the first month. On the standard packages, that'll shave $133 off if you prepay for a year on the standard, or $14 off your first month of Trade Ideas Standard, $85 a month. So right now is a great time to buy the packages because, significant discounts in lieu of the open house. As always, we offer ongoing support and one-on-one training for any new user. So anytime you have an issue, you can email myself or Steve at these email addresses. You can always give us a phone call for something more technically related or billing related. And if you'd like to follow myself or Steve on Twitter, Steve is Today Trader. I am QuantBot, and of course you can always find a lot of valuable information by following Trade Ideas 1. That's Dan Merkin. He's the founder and CEO of the company. So between these two guys, including myself, we try to keep you entertained and deliver some high-quality information via the Twitter stream as well. So, Steve, anything to add before we let everybody get back to their day?
No, thanks for showing up. And again, if you're doing the open house, you really should be in the live trading room. And in the mornings, we have a technical support tab on that chat box that you can get any of our attention during the day, which is really the best place to get your questions answered in real time. So if you're not in the live trading room, you really should be, especially on the open house. It's a much quicker, easier learning curve if you're in there. Take my word for it.
All right. Once again, want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy day to come here to the Office Hours webinar. Wish everybody great luck, great success for tomorrow, and feel free to sign up for the Trade of the Week webinar this coming Wednesday. Thanks, everybody. This will be up on YouTube pretty quickly, right, Steve? We did record it, correct?
Yeah, we recorded. I'll turn the recording off. I just dropped another link in the chat, the question box window for somebody asking. I'll leave the webinar up for another 10 minutes. Did you forget to drop something in there?
What? I forgot to drop off the gifts here. I don't think make people here, so stand by.
Alert link. Yeah, so we're going to pop this one into the chat window, guys. On the GoToMeeting toolbar there's a couple of tabs you can expand or collapse. You want to expand the chat tab by clicking the plus button, and Jamie's going to drop in his price alerts that he just set, which is the cloud link, into that chat window. And all you have to do is right-click and save that link. And once you've got that link saved onto your clipboard, it will automatically load in from the load from cloud function on Trade Ideas. So we'll leave this up for another 20 seconds or so. For those of you who want to get into the chat window and grab that cloud link, you're all set. And we will try and talk about some good entries next time we speak, Raphael. Save that question and we'll do our best. All right, everybody, I'm going to stop.